Hey, welcome to Goshen Prepping. Thanks for joining us. We worry about economic collapses, government collapse, our country turning to, well, crap hits the fan. And when this happens, as we've witnessed in other countries, by the way, there are specific stages that start leading the way, heading toward the inevitable of ultimate collapse. And what are those stages? Let's take a look at it. We're going to talk about this for just a second and stick with it because, of course, as we go further into this, the more devastating it becomes. One of the first stages we see is simply just shortages. Because understand, our government has set up an infrastructure, making it so, obviously, in our free economy, we can let businesses thrive and do very well. We want to make it so our highways, the highways during Eisenhower years were really set up for military reasons, by the way. Think about that. But obviously, interstate commerce, making our country thrive through interstate trucking, has become one of the major key points we see on our nation's highways. They are literally making it so our economy and country grows. So if we start seeing problems with the government, we're going to start seeing problems when it comes to trucking. And that's exactly what we see. Gas prices going up, diesel prices going up, labor shortages, not to mention as they're trying to make it in other states, like California, for example, and others following suit, that, you know what, no more gasoline engines, no more diesel engines, and they're trying to shift everything to electric. So as we see more and more problems occurring in our country, we're going to see that infrastructure as far as transport of goods and services across the country go down. And sure enough, right now we are still seeing shortages. Granted, we're not seeing as many shortages as we did over the last year or two, but we're not out of the woods. We're definitely seeing over the next few years more and more legislation making it so electric vehicles are going to be what's going to be the only thing that's allowed. That is coming. And so we're going to have more and more problems getting your favorite things at your grocery store or even your favorite restaurant. Furthermore, as time goes on, we're going to see more and more problems with the power grid, not just because of the electric vehicles, but also because of legislation making it so we don't have coal plants and stuff too. So as the government pushes more and more legislation and allowing more and more electric vehicles, pushing more and more electric vehicles and less power, even Elon Musk admits our electric grid is nowhere near able to handle all this electricity of what our demands need, even just in the next 10 years. So we're going to be seeing blackouts. Some of those blackouts are coordinated blackouts, because understand, if there's simply too much electricity being drawn on a specific part of the grid, as the frequency of the system goes down, it'll automatically start tripping off systems, which can be a catastrophic across the country loss of the power grids, or at least your specific grid you may live in. So what happens is the government purposely shuts off specific areas of the grid so that way the whole grid doesn't collapse. So we're going to be seeing rolling power outages as time goes on. I could see this even happening as easy as next year. It could happen this summer too, because we're having massive heat waves and a lot of people are using their nice cool air conditioners to compensate for this. But rolling blackouts is something else we need to look for as the company starts losing control. Third, finances. And we know this is coming too. We've already seen a few bank collapses. Having far more bank collapses in the future is pretty much guaranteed. The few banks that have already collapsed, the big ones have actually taken the brunt of that, have soaked up all the different type of assets they had. But understand, more and more bank failures are going to happen. In fact, they estimate over the next year or two, 200 more bank failures. Ultimately, their plan is making it so there's only going to be a few major banks that control everything, and a lot of these smaller banks will simply be gone. Of course, with this, we're going to see bank runs too. People pull money out of the banks. I want my cash here. Makes the bank unstable. The bank collapses, which causes more people to pull money from their banks, and the process continues. In addition to this, we see a direct time connection with, of course, Wall Street, and the stocks are going to collapse as well. When we hit, of course, the Great Depression, we saw a major stock collapse coinciding at the same time the bank runs and the bank collapses happen as well. History teaches us these things. So when we see collapse of our entire system, we easily see a collapse of the economy as well. Now, when all this happens, picture all of this as being like the trifecta of horribleness between food shortages, not be able to drive anywhere on the highways, rolling blackouts, and now the money in banks are shutting down. You're going to see unrest. And as the rest continues, some of this unrest, I'd hate to say it, is even actually orchestrated and controlled. But even more so, as this happens, the government's going to say, which the government caused all this in the first place, we're going to see martial law imposed. And people, it's really funny. And when it comes to preparedness and people who prep, people are always worried about martial law, and that's well put. But people who are not preppers will say, hogwash. Everybody always talks about martial law. It's amazing. Do your research. Look at your history. How many times martial law has been imposed in this country since the country's been developed, or since the Revolutionary War? So the last 200 years, it's incredible. I wish I gave you the number. I should look this up. How many times martial law has been imposed? Many, many, many times. But since in modern times, people are so relaxed watching TV all the time and just going to work and living their zombie life, they've never seen martial law in their lifetime, so they think, oh, it'll never happen. Yeah, it will happen. In fact, it'll probably happen in the next couple of years. But if we see all these things, this trifecta of all these problems coming into play, martial law is certainly going to be one of the next things that's actually imposed. And when this happens, not only will we tell you the new term, shelter at home, but we're going to be seeing checkpoints on roads. We're going to be making it so you can't go certain places. Remember, we talked about this structure as far as the interstate commerce and everything. It's not going to be widely open for you to travel across the country. They are trying to put us already into 15-minute cities as it is. They're trying to make it so traveling, we don't want traveling, because that's putting a problem with our carbon footprint and all that crap. But continuing on after that, it all leads to ultimately eventual loss of rights. That's the whole point of all of this, because even right now, this administration pushes all the time that this Constitution that we have is, well, of course, it's moldable. And I mean, it is moldable. Our Constitution itself is made so we can add amendments to it to try to make it so it keeps up with our times. But they look at being the Constitution as being archaic, and they're teaching this to our children as well. So our eventual loss of rights, I don't see this as a possibility. I don't even see it as a probability. I look at it as eventually this is going to happen. It's just a matter of how long will that take. Only time will tell. But either way, we see things heading in that direction first, like shortages and problems with the power grid. But once that starts happening, obviously keep watching our channel too. But start watching, because then we're going to see things accelerating even faster. Put in the comments below, when do you think all this will take place? Next few months? Next year? Not for a few years out? I'm curious to see what you think about this. Thanks for watching.